4 themes in modern science that enable this work to go forward. These are critical insights in the life sciences that provide a foundation for this work. This work could never have occurred were it not for these major insights. The first is something that I know all of you have heard about. I'll give a particular take on it, and that is neuroplasticity. Our brains are constantly being shaped, wittingly or unwittingly. Most of the time, our brains are shaped unwittingly. Most of the time, we have absolutely no idea what the forces are that are shaping our brains. Moreover, we have little control over those events. The very mechanisms that produce suffering in the world are the same mechanisms that can enable us to transform. And these are mechanisms of plasticity. We can harness these mechanisms for the good. And so the invitation in all this work is that we can actually change our brains more intentionally by cultivating positive habits of mind, which I will show you can actually change the function and structure of the brain in ways that promote enduring qualities that are positive, enduring well-being. So this is really important. The second theme is related to this first theme in the realm of genomics, and this is epigenetics. All of us have a fixed complement of base pairs that we're born with that constitute our DNA, and for the most part, that will not change over the course of your life. But what will change very dynamically is the extent to which genes are expressed, the extent to which genes are turned on or turned off. That is dynamically regulated. And we know that adversity gets under the skin and actually alters gene expression. We know there are studies that have been done. The kids in poverty actually have different profiles of gene expression than kids that come from middle-class families. There are data now that show this. And we know that these mechanisms are very dynamic and reversible. And so epigenetics is really a profound new development in science that enables us to study plasticity at the molecular genomic level. And so we can think of genes as having little volume controls that go from low to high, and those volume controls are impacted by experience, by the environment, and also by intentional cultivation of mental habits. The third theme is that there is increasing understanding of the bidirectional communication between the mind and brain in the body. Our brains are embodied. And there is now a plethora of evidence that clearly supports the conjecture that psychological well-being and physical health are correlated. Individuals who report higher levels of well-being are physically healthier if you look at large epidemiological data. The best evidence for this probably comes from a whole series of studies that have been done in British civil servants with very large sample sizes that clearly support this general view. And so it leads to the conjecture that cultivating well-being should impact not only our psychological well-being, but should also impact our physical health. And that is a radical proposition, because if that turns out to be true, then cultivating healthy habits of mind should actually, at a population level, improve physical health. It should decrease healthcare utilization. It should decrease prescription drug use, and it should decrease healthcare costs. Mark Bertolini was the CEO of Aetna, one of the largest medical insurance groups in the world. He recently stepped down from that position, but during his time at Aetna, he initiated a study to look at the impact of strategies to cultivate well-being on healthcare utilization in employees at Aetna. Now, I don't want to make too much of this study. It's been published, and my honest opinion is that it's not a great study. It has serious scientific limitations, but I think that there is a grain of truth, and it needs to be followed up and replicated at a much larger scale. But what they reported in that study is that employees who went through this program showed an average reduction of $113 per month per employee in healthcare costs 5 years down the road. And so while I think that that's probably an inflated number because of limitations in the study, it speaks to the potential importance of this insight. The fourth theme is the theme that I'll actually show a little data here or talk about how it's done because it's so unconventional in many ways and may be surprising to some of you. But it is the conjecture that all of us, that is, every human being, comes into the world with what I call innate basic goodness. That is, they show a propensity to prefer pro-social and warm-hearted interactions compared with those that are selfish, narcissistic, and aggressive. So what is the evidence for that? I'm going to just show you two little things just to give you an idea of how we can approach this very rigorously. So I'm going to show you a couple of short video clips. And this work has been published in the very best scientific journals in the world. This is not schlock science. This is really hardcore mainstream science. So this video was shown to 6-month-old babies. Okay, that's one. And here's the second. Which of these videos do you think 6-month-old babies prefer? And how do we ask them? How do you ask a 6-month-old baby? Well, there are many different ways to ask them. One of them is you can look at their facial expressions in response to this, and 6-month-old babies smile in response to the first one, much more than in response to the second one. We can also use infrared eye tracking to very precisely quantify the duration and extent of looking. And infants at 6 months of age look much longer at the first video compared to the second video. So let me show you a second study in the same genre, and there are a whole series of these now. Okay, and here's the second one. Okay, so after these infants are offered these puppets, and the dependent measure here is simply which puppet does the infant reach for? Does it reach for the puppet that was aggressive and prevented this opening of the box, or does it reach for the puppet that was helpful and altruistic? And the data clearly show that the vast majority of infants reach for the altruistic puppet. And all these studies have been done with very careful controls for the colors, excuse me, that denote these different puppets. All of that has been carefully taken into account. So these are the kind of data that lead to the suggestion that early in life, we come into the world with this pro-social bias, this pro-social propensity. And when we engage in specific exercises to cultivate qualities like kindness and generosity, we're actually nurturing qualities that are there from the start. And this has led some of us to conceptualize qualities like kindness and compassion in the same way that scientists conceptualize language. We all know that human beings are born with a biological propensity for language. But for that propensity to be expressed, it requires that we be raised in a normal linguistic community. And there are case studies of feral children who are raised in the wild. They do not develop normal language. And the same, we think, is true for kindness and compassion. These are qualities that are there from the start, but they require nurturing. Okay, so this is a depiction of 4 themes. Just to review, I talked about neuroplasticity, epigenetics, the bidirectional communication between the brain and the body, and innate basic goodness as 4 major scientific developments that enable the work that I'm about to describe to really go forward, to provide a solid foundation for this work.